Hello, David 4040 here with the ship's roster review. Today I'm looking at Kragaad's ship's roster. So, one thing I'd like to note here is Kragaad has an excellent fleet arena team. You can see he's gotten number one consecutively for the past month, and he's obviously been able to stay there. I find it interesting you have Evan Hawke as one of your reinforcements, but it makes a lot of sense. It can come in, dispel the taunt so that you can get in there easily and attack. One thing I'll say is if you're wanting to do a little variant of this team, I've run into with attacking my malevolence team that can be a little tricky that I see people using in this negotiator malevolence hybrid meta is using Ahsoka as a starting ship in place of Umbara. Maybe that's something you want to play around with, see if it's a little bit more effective. You do have Ahsoka, some relics on Ahsoka, so maybe that's possible for you. Just a suggestion, but the fleet you are using now is also meta, along with the Ahsoka as a starting in place of Umbara and Umbara as a reinforcement instead, if that's what you want to do. The other thing I'll note, based on simply your arena fleet here, is you're not using Clone Sergeant, which is the typical meta, and again, makes sense. The dispel from the reinforcement for Evan Hawke is very powerful. Um, but Clone Sergeant does provide the extra taunt that could be useful if needed. And so when you do get Negotiator 7 star, it might be useful to have Clone Sergeant ready to go if you don't already. But let's take a closer look at your actual ships here, Kragaad. See where you are. So let's just take a quick look at your Clone Sergeant. Um, it's Gear 12, which is excellent. You could probably use that now if you wanted. If you wanted to relic it out, you could. However, you're probably also eyeing this Y-Wing Starfighter for when it becomes farmable. And honestly, as someone who attacks these fleets with malevolence, I found Y-Wing to be about as equally effective as Clone Sergeant, although it's probably a little bit more effective because it has a nice AoE attack that can be useful against malevolence fleets. Um, I don't like seeing any sort of AoE attack with my malevolence fleet, personally. So, those are either one of those is a good tank to be looking out for as a fourth reinforcement when you get Negotiator 7 star. Because it's always nice to have a reinforcement tank that can taunt. But overall, it looks like you've prepared the previous metas. You have most of the Rebels stuff prepared. You have most um, with Falcon and with the Falcon fleet and everything. You have most of the previous Geonosian fleet meta prepared. All those guys reliced out. But I want to go through and pick out some of these utility ships that might make a particular fleet you already have mostly ready to go a little better, so you don't have to be as reliant on certain things. Look at some of these utility ships, try and improve some of the stuff you already have. First thing I want to note here is that you have both K2SO and Zeb at a low gear level on these ships. I know they might not be the best characters in the game at this point, but it makes both Cassie Ewing and Ghost more effective ships by increasing their character stats. You're going to be increasing the overall stats of the ship for things like speed, for things like health, damage, just making these ships more effective. And considering the Rebel meta is still very good in things like territory wars and Grand Arena, it'll be useful to have these ships be more effective. And also, I want to note for this Rebel fleet, considering you don't want to be using Houndstooth, you need a third starter fleet. You need a third starter ship in this fleet for when you're using it in things like territory wars, because Houndstooth should be used alongside your negotiator fleet or some sort of other secondary fleet. And there's a way of getting around this. If you have Biston's U-Wing up and ready to go, I suggest getting these characters Gear 12. It makes an excellent third starter in a Rebel fleet that can make it harder to defeat on defense because of all the damage output, and an excellent offensive fleet for attacking. It can even take out a decent negotiator fleets, not necessarily max relic out ones, though I've done it before. That's harder. But this is a ship you want to have ready to go. It increases the utility of your rebel fleet, allows it to be more effective without Houndstooth, which nowadays can be the mark of a really good fleet, being able to be effective without Houndstooth, because Houndstooth is needed almost anywhere. In areas like territory wars, you're wanting to have a good 3 or 4 fleets as an individual. And then areas like Grand Arena, in case their fleet is hard to defeat. So having Biston's U-Wing will be there to help you, and it might even make your Rebel fleet more effective for light side territory battles. Having this ship up and running and ready to go, it really has good damage output. It's essentially the TIE Advance for the Rebel fleet, and the TIE Advance is an excellent ship. So that's Biston's U-Wing. Another thing I want to note here is the Hyena Bomber. It's 5 stars. It literally just became farmable yesterday. This is a ship that should immediately be on your radar for farming up to 7 stars. I know you're working on the Negotiator right now to get that 7 stars, but as soon as you get Negotiator 7 star, I know you're going to be working on Malevolence. And let me tell you, I personally use a Malevolence fleet instead of Negotiator at the moment. And man, is a Malevolence fleet fun, first of all. And second of all, Hyena Bomber is central to that team. And having the ship up and ready to go also means you're not reliant on Houndstooth. And again, Malevolence fleet. It's another fleet that is meta. This is a fleet that's actually meta without Houndstooth at all. And so having access to that fleet is going to be essential. Sure, Negotiator is still ruling out, but having Hyena Bomber is also essential because it's very likely that CG is going to add more Separatist ships in the future to make the Separatist fleet even better. So you should have that on your farming radar to either be farming now or in the near future, because having that 7 star Hyena Bomber is going to be central for a good Reb for a good Separatist fleet. The other one, it's not farmable yet, but keep a lookout for when the Wide Wing Starfighter becomes farmable. I know you're going to want to be using it, so just keep that on your radar. Keep thinking about it. I need to farm this. I need to farm this, because that's going to be a tank you're going to want as a reinforcement, probably in your negotiator fleet. So keep that in mind. Some other things to think about. Looks like you have a couple of the first order ships up and running. Um, let's see. I'm looking at your first order and resistance right now. So let's take a look at your first order specifically. So you have 3 out of 4 first order ships in pretty good condition right now. I would suggest gearing up the first order Special Forces TIE Pilot. Why is this? CG just announced the finalizer, and this has been a fleet that it's decent under Executrix and Chimera at the moment. It's not meta at all, but can still. It's good offensively. I've never gone after it because it's not a great defensive fleet, but with Finalizer, I'm sure it's going to become better. They're probably going to add some more ships to this over time. So being prepared, this is thinking about future metas and just being prepared for what that future meta could look like. And having Special Forces TIE Fighter and TIE Pilot geared up is going to be essential to that. Fortunately, you already have the other 3 ships good to go, and you're in a much better position than I am. Let's look at your resistance as well real quick. So, looking at your resistance here, there's very few ships in the game right now for resistance. You got Ray's Millennium Falcon, which you have the characters on, geared up pretty well. You got Poe Dameron's X-Wing, which you also have geared up decently at the moment, but you don't have Resistance Pilot geared up. If you're wanting to prep for future metas, this is another one to think about gearing up because they also just announced the Radis being added to the game. So having the ship ready to go, they'll probably add more Resistance ships as well. And there are plenty of options for Resistance ships. They could add stuff from the Resistance TV show, even though it's not possible, or stuff from the new movies. So just keep that in mind. Resistance Pilot and Special Forces TIE Fighter are both two pilots to keep in mind for gearing so that their ships are ready in case those fleets become meta in the future with the new capital ships being added. Let's see, anything else I can note? Well, Emperor Shuttle, this is another great utility ship that can be used in a wide range of fleets, especially Empire fleets under something like Chimera or Sith fleets. And so having Royal Guard geared up is going to do a similar thing to Zeb and K2SO here. Just make the ship faster, deal more damage, more health, all that overall stuff. And also, with all three of these characters, it'll allow you to level up the ability associated with that character higher, which also makes the ship more effective. Is there anything else? Um, I'm not really seeing anything else at the moment. I do want to come down here and just give a quick note about capital ship commanders. So these are always characters that are good to be investing time and resources into because these are always capital ships are always going to be the clutch of a fleet. They're going to be what brings the fleet together. The better the capital ship is, the faster a capital ship is, the better your fleet is regardless. So, gearing up Tarkin, Akbar, and Windu to 13, as well as your Grievous, if Grievous isn't always there, already there, are excellent choices for just improving fleets that may be associated with these characters in the present or in the future. So, just a good option there. Not saying you have to go do that. You have the only one that I would say has to be gear 13, unfortunately for you, is your current meta fleet commander, which is General Kenobi. So good on you there. Um, so I hope that helps you, Kragaad. Um, really, it's just some minor gear up characters, make ships you already have better, or some certain utility ships, so that you can be a little bit less reliant on Houndstooth, or just do a little bit better. But overall, your fleet is great. I mean, you even have great ships like Lando's Millennium Falcon already prepped up and going. You have IG 2000 ready and going, even better than I do. I don't have IG 88 Gear 12. Plo Koon is up there. Another one you might want to think about taking Gear 13 because he's in your current fleet. But you don't necessarily have to. Gear 12 should be sufficient for nearly any of these ships. I mean, you have a 7-star Vulture Droid, so that's all great things. I mean, if you wanted to gear up Gauntlet, it's had some minor uses in the past. Consular might be the least of your worries of everything I've mentioned, but you could gear him up too, just to have the more ships you have access to is always better. Just like having access to more characters, in case that ship becomes viable for any reason or something in the future. You never know. But let me know if you have any questions, Kragad. But I hope that gave you a little bit of direction for some work you can do in ships. I think arena wise, you're doing excellent. It's more just working on some of those ins and outs for having a little bit more flexibility and improving some of those side fleets you may have for things like territory wars to make those fleets a little bit more effective. So, okay, well, good night, Kragaad. Keep working at it. Let me know if you need anything else regarding ships.